Thank you very much, Don. And I want to once again thank Alex, Don, the whole farm team, all the organizers for this great conference. I'm so glad to be a part of this, especially since it's so inclusive and it enables a debate and discussion of all the issues. So thank you very much to Farm and all the other sponsors for this conference. The talk's basically titled Global Dietary Imperative to Global Warming. I think I have about 12 minutes, and I tend to speak very fast. So I'm going to try and speak slowly. We need to get through here. So basically the idea I'll give you up front and talk about the background, a little bit of background on global warming, what it really is, the impact of animal agriculture, the inefficiency, the pollution involved, and then some steps to solutions, and also give you some resources. So the main idea I'll give it to you first is that human activities have changed the composition of the atmosphere. And so it is through human anthropogenic causes that we actually are seeing global warming. And so it's really the burning of fossil fuels, coal, oil, and of course the deforestation that is causing greenhouse gases, which is heating up the atmosphere and the planet. And so the key thing here is, the main point here is that it's rarely addressed, but it's eliminating the production and consumption of meat and other animal products on a global scale. That's really vital in reducing the effects of global warming as well as many other environmental threats. This is something that's been overlooked by mainstream media and so forth, and it's, as you'll see later, one of the key causes of global warming. And so something that hasn't gotten a lot of press, but there has been a lot of attention to global warming and climate change in mainstream media and so forth, but this connection has rarely been addressed. And I know many people are working on this. So not only do we have that, but there's also other benefits that we get from moving away from animal diets, and you know all about those. We've been talking about those for the last few days. And so really moving to an all plant-based diet, vegan diet, is perhaps the greatest single step that we can make in terms of reducing global warming. So just the background, what is global warming? It's one definition is it's an increase in the average temperature near the surface of the Earth and the atmosphere, and it's what contributes to global climate patterns, so it's changed those climates. So it's an increase in the average temperature and really refers to, more specifically, the last 2 or 3 decades. So it's the warming trend that's happening. And it occurs from a variety of causes. What we're seeing is that the human-induced causes are the ones that are dominating, especially over the last few decades. And scientists are sure that these are the human activities, and even organizations like the EPA are actually citing that too. So it's not just environmental organizations, but it's well accepted by most scientific organizations that it is due to human causes. And right now, the average temperature has increased about 1.3 degrees Fahrenheit in the last century. We'll talk about some of the future results. When you talk about global warming, it's always the greenhouse effect. And what that really is just the sun's radiation that's coming onto the Earth. Some of it gets absorbed on the Earth's surface, some of it gets reflected back into space. And it's this layer of the atmosphere here, and the chemicals and the particulates that are in the atmosphere that cause the trapping of the energy. So a lot of the energy that's from the Earth being radiated back into space actually gets absorbed back in the atmosphere here because of the particles, and it scatters the energy, so it actually traps it. So as we change the composition of the atmosphere, we're actually increasing the heating effect of the planet. And so the chemicals actually trap more of the energy. Instead of it being re-radiated out in space, it actually stays in the atmosphere, and that causes this warming trend. That's just a very basic overview of the greenhouse effect. It's much more complex than that, but there's all sorts of chemical and physical processes that go on here. But basically, it's the trapping of the energy in the atmosphere due to these various gases, and I'll talk about that in a second. So basically, what are greenhouse gases? They're any gas that absorbs infrared radiation in the atmosphere, and they are things like water vapor, H2O, carbon dioxide, CO2, there's methane, CH4, nitrous oxide, all the chlorofluorocarbons that you've heard about many times, and then ozone. And greenhouse gases are important for life as we know it, so it does provide important functions, but it's the way we're doing it as human beings in terms of the fossil fuel burning and so forth that's changing the composition. And so we have these increased temperatures on the Earth. Every year since 1992, we have the warmest global average temperatures on record. So every year since then, that's the average temperature. I'll show you a graph on this. And the warmest temperatures of all time of history, 1998 and 2005. So even the most recent years are the warmest on record. But not only that, but since 1992, every year after that has been the warmest temperature recorded. And if you look at some of the models, and I'll reference some of this here in the next slides, some of the models, if you look out to 2100, so in the next 100 years, these models basically show that the increase in temperature won't be 1 degree per Celsius per 100 years as we've seen in the past. It's actually be on the order between 2 and 11.5 degrees Fahrenheit. So it's going to be a large global trend over the next 100 years, anywhere between 2 and 11.5 degrees Fahrenheit, depending on the models. And these models are the ones that are referenced by IPCC. I'll tell you about that in a second. There's another effect, which is global dimming, and that's actually masking the effect of global warming. There's actually particulates in the atmosphere, black carbon and so forth, that cause more reflection out on the surface. And so you're actually not seeing the heating that you would have seen if these pollutant particles weren't in the air. As we clean up the atmosphere and we start reducing the amount of the pollution in the air, you'll actually see even greater global warming trends. So global temperatures, if you look from 1850 up to 2000, and you use 1940 as a reference for World War II, you can see the actual increase and how much it's increasing very quickly. And just what's doing this? It's basically petroleum, coal, natural gas. The black line here shows how quickly we're actually increasing over the last 40 years. What are some of the things that you'll see with global warming? So you see basically rising sea levels, flooding, submerged islands. There's changes in the amount of precipitation. It's also the intensity of extreme weather events, there's droughts, wildfires, retreated glaciers, permafrost melt, acidification of the oceans, destruction of wildlife habitats. I know that Deborah's going to get into some of these, and she's going to talk to you more about the effects. These are some of the things that you'll see. So also more endangered species, extinctions, there's upward shift of plant and animal ranges. I'm sorry I'm speaking so fast, I've got a 5-minute warning here. The emergence of insects and egg-laying birds that are happening much earlier than they typically do. Agricultural yields are changing. You have the ranges of disease vectors, what's actually causing the disease, those are all changing. Might have more environmental refugees. These are some of the effects of global warming that you will be seeing. You've already seen now. IPCC is an intergovernmental panel on climate change. It is really the authority on global warming. And so they actually do a review, large-scale review of the scientific literature. They're the ones who are most often cited. And so it's established about 20 years ago by 2 UN organizations. And what's really interesting is coming out in November is their 4th assessment report, which everyone is anticipating. We've seen some parts of that, and it confirms what we're talking about here so far. There's some general mitigation strategies of global warming. There is a reduction of energy per person use, so conservation. There's also this whole idea of if we control the population, limit the growth, we can also control it. So there's a per person reduction, and if we just reduce the number of people. There's also things of shifting to alternative renewable energy sources. That's one way to mitigate it. I think Deborah's going to talk about that a bit too. And there's some other engineering ways in terms of capturing what's released by the power plants and then storing those in geological formations or wherever. So there's some other technological solutions they're looking at. And so of course this means that there has to be wide-scale engagement of governments, businesses, communities, religious organizations everywhere. And it's individual lifestyle and political action that has to happen. And climate policy, I'm just going to skip over it. I think everyone knows kind of where we stand in the U.S. versus other parts of the world. Specifically, the mitigation strategy I want to talk to you about here is basically plant-based diets. And there's overwhelming evidence, significant information that links animal agriculture's devastating effects to global warming. I'll give you some numbers on that. And it's also this increasingly globalized standard American diet, as you know, the SAD, and it's really been ignored and overlooked. And in addition to technology developments, we really need to affect the consciousness of people. Everyone here, that's what we're doing, but we need to do this on a large scale. We need to go out and actually give people these facts, this information. So I'm going to try and give you some of those numbers very quickly. And also dispelling the myth that technology is going to solve all problems. I mean, that's right, there are often side effects of technological solutions, whereas pository dietary shifts involve other helpful benefits in terms of personal public health, the effect on the animals, and so forth. So it's not just technology, we really need to look at a broader look. If you look at what happens in animal agriculture, it's very inefficient, vastly inefficient in terms of resources. So you have the food that goes in to get, quote unquote, the food that comes out of the system. All the water that's used, the land that's used, the energy that's used, all of these are vastly inefficient. On top of that, you get this devastation in terms of pollution. So you get land, water, air pollution, you have all this manure and urine that results from it. I'll give you some numbers, and the destruction of the rainforest. The impact, I think the biggest thing that's come out, many of you know about this, so let me just tell you about it one more time. The United Nations FAO, Food and Agricultural Organization, released a report in November of 2006. This is a powerful report. It's probably better than anything we've seen so far. It says that basically animal-based agriculture causes 18% of greenhouse gas emissions. So 18%. And that's actually larger than transportation. So basically cows are still problematic, but cows in animal diets are contributing more. So it's really what we eat is actually more important than what we drive. That's just amazing. It's absolutely powerful. And if you look at the emissions, right now today, of the top few greenhouse gases, 9% of all the carbon dioxide emissions are due to animal agriculture. 37% of methane is due to animal agriculture. 65% of nitrous oxide is due to animal agriculture. And if you look at the global warming potential of the other gases, methane is actually 23 times more harmful to global warming than is carbon dioxide. And the nitrous oxide is 296 times more harmful than carbon dioxide. So you can see this incredible amount that's being contributed by animal agriculture. It's by these gases here. Another great study that was done by researchers at the University of Chicago said that basically anyone who eats the standard American diet contributes an extra 1.5 tons of CO2 than someone eating a meat-free diet. So every person that's not eating a vegetarian diet actually contributes an extra 1.5 tons of carbon per person annually. Sorry I'm running through this quickly, but I'm going to try it. And impact of animal agriculture. That same FAO study says by the year 2050, this is actually a conservative estimate, that it'll be projecting a doubling of the meat and dairy consumption. So by the year 2050, according to this, not a bunch of environmental organizations or animal rights people, this is the UN FAO, says we're going to double the amount of meat and dairy consumption in the next 40, 50 years. Many people say it's much quicker than that. And we do over 100 billion animals, including the sea animals, that die every year in the world. And you know how inefficiently grain is used, fresh water resources are dwindling, the land use is bad. I've got some numbers on this very quickly. And not only this, you have other problems that result with the way we're doing things. And there's direct competition for resources. We have conflicts that arise over resources. So as an example, many of you know this. For those of you who don't, you know that there's vast inefficiency in terms of grain. I'll just go through this very quickly. It takes right now 12 to 16 pounds of grain to yield 1 pound of beef. If you look at what we do if we don't cycle that grain through animals, it could be that much less of a factor of 16 more efficient if we just ate those plant products directly rather than cycling those through the animals, eating them secondhand as the average world citizen does. That could be 8 loaves of bread, 24 plates of spaghetti. If you look at water, look at how many gallons of water are used to produce 1 pound of beef. It's 2,500 to 5,000 gallons of water. You guys know these numbers. 2,500 to 5,000 gallons of water per pound of beef. That's the average person shower for 6 months. If you look at tomatoes, it's only 25 gallons of water per pound of tomatoes. Wheat is 25. Apples are 50. If you look at this huge, enormous magnitude, it takes 1,000 gallons of water to produce 1 gallon of milk. So basically, 14 times more water is used for an animal-based diet than a vegan diet. As far as acres of land, it takes 3¼ acres of land to sustain one average diet human. It only takes 1/3 of an acre for vegetarian, only 1/6 of an acre for vegan. It's a factor of 20. A vegan diet requires 1/20th of land that's actually needed for a standard American diet. Calories of fuel. If you look at how many calories of fuel does it take to produce 1 calorie of protein from beef, it takes 78 calories, whereas soybeans only take 2 calories. Look at that, it's a factor of 40. Soybeans are 40 times more efficient in terms of energy to get the same amount of protein. And also, how extravagant is that? 1 pound of grain-fed beef is equivalent to that amount of energy for 1 gallon of gasoline. To produce 1 pound of beef, it requires the same amount of energy to produce 1 gallon of gasoline. That's how inefficient animal agriculture is. There's also pesticides, insecticides, all the manure, all the urine, the pollution that's added, rainforests. Thank you. Rainforests are destroyed, and so when rainforests are destroyed, it's two-phase. We actually lose the land to cattle grazing, and on top of that, the ability for those plants to then reabsorb carbon dioxide through photosynthesis and release oxygen, that's also destroyed. There's a double effect on rainforests, that destruction. And also in terms of manure, this one probably isn't as well known, but how many pounds of manure do you think, wet manure does an average dairy cow produce a day? You can think of what humans produce, right? An average dairy cow produces 120 pounds of wet manure per day. We have to do something with this. If you look at the pictures, they just basically collect all that into mounds, and that goes into the land, into the air, into the water, and so forth. So it's, what do we do with all that? Okay, so the imperative, of course, is that our planet today is imperiled like never before. And that includes non-human animals and the human animals. So we're so far along this path of losing everything that at some point it's not even going to matter what we do because the planet is not going to be able to sustain us. So ecological sustainability demands that we explore all of the alternatives. What are the solutions of the day that we can bring to bear? Who's going to do this? It has to be us. It has to be now. And we're all interconnected. We can reach out to so many communities of people with this type of information. All the work that's being done today is phenomenal what's being done here. In the animal issues, compassion, ethics, and so forth, in terms of health, public health, human health, and all that. I think the environmental arguments are also extremely powerful. If we eliminate everything else, and we just talked to them about environmentalism, we still have an enormous amount of information. So basically, the diet is also unifying. It covers all of these. It's a unifying, integrating way. And so the facts are on our side, the truth is on our side. And if I just give you a quick quote, Merle Watson, it's a great quote. Great quote. Basically, like animal flesh, the appetite is driving every major category of environmental damage. And another quote that you hear a lot, which I think is excellent. Eating meat is like driving a huge SUV. Vegetarian diet is like driving a hybrid car. And vegan diet is like riding a bicycle. So what we need to do is all be vegan and ride a bicycle. I think that's the cue, the music's on. So, let me do that. And the world absolutely needs us to do our part. All of you, armed with a few facts, this and more, can do so much. And so basically my message is go vegan, encourage others to go vegan. That will help reduce global warming and all these other environmental threats, and that's for the benefit of the whole planet. So thank you very much.